Hi everyone, good afternoon. We're live on the Trade Decorator Festival and in this afternoon's session I'm going to be joined live by Brian Jones. He's the UK manager of Chemfix Products UK, who manufacture Timbabuild Epoxy resins. Now before we go over to the live Q&A session with Brian, we have got a 30-minute introduction to the Timbabuild system. He'll be showing you some demonstrations of repairs using the EHB60, the ERC10 and Timbaglaze. Now we are actually live on Facebook as well this afternoon. Anybody watching on Facebook, you'll be able to see the demonstrations and see what's going on. If you do want to join us for the live Q&A, you do need to join us over here on Crowdcast, and there is a link there on the post on Facebook that you can just click on and join us at any time. The session isn't locked, so you can just join if you want to come over and join the live Q&A. Now let's get started. Let's have a look at the Timbabuild demonstration, and I'll see you all in a few minutes. Before I do, sorry, those of you that are new to the platform, you'll see there's a comments section. Feel free to comment as much as you like. If you could refrain from putting questions in this part of the session, as the questions will not transfer when we go live with Brian, and I wouldn't want to miss any of your questions. The green button beneath me is to join the live Q&A, but don't press that until you see me later, and I'll tell you exactly when to do so, because you will leave the session and you will miss the demonstration. I'll see you soon.
Today we're here to introduce the Timbabuild system. Timbabuild system consists of the ERC10, EHB60, we have the primer, we have the Timbabuild finish, and we have the Timbaglaze. So we're going to do some demonstrations to show you how they all work. First of all, we'll start off with the 10. Now the 10 is designed for jointing and splicing. The 10 fits into the tool, label upwards. Always label up. It does tell you on the side, you'll see it there. To dispense, we just squeeze the gun and both come out together. When you first initially open a new tube, you must waste the first bit that comes out. As you can see there now, that's the center bit and the brown is the outside. So take the top, clean it like so, and then reinsert the cover. To mix it, just to show you, there's the white on the inside. Now, after a period of time, as you can see, this is an old tube that I've used previously. You can get a little bit of hard on the surface there. Remove it and then literally mix until you get one even color. So we're looking for one color now. You'll notice a big difference between the two. Once we come to the 60 is very, very thick, whereas this is quite runny. Clean your tool in between for mixing, because you'll notice you still get colour of the light and the dark on there. We want to make sure that we have one even mix right throughout. Okay, now that's a nice even colour right throughout. So if we were using this as a joint, what we do is just literally show you the strength of it. Just put some on there. Now, unlike our competitors, we don't need a great deal of product. All we need to do is literally put it on, squeeze it down until we have about 1.5 mil of material. Leave that, and that will cure, and it cures so hard that you cannot break it, even with just that amount of material on there. Make sure once you've used it that you clean up after yourselves. So with using the Timbabuild wipes, we can clean our tools. Now, as I said, you can use this for splicing or for jointing. If, for instance, we were doing a very large repair, then we would recommend that you splice them in first and then completely cover over with the 60 afterwards. That way you totally protect the wood underneath. Board nice and clean. Now, before you use anything else on the board, you must wipe it dry to make sure that there's nothing wet underneath the epoxy, because the epoxy doesn't like moisture underneath it. Once it's cured, it's not a problem. But always dry your board first. The 10, very simple, easy to use, but limited in its use. We do say you can use it up to 10 mil, but if you use it up to 10 mil, you can't use it then on the upright. You would only use it on a base, like so. If you use it on the upright, it would tend to run down. Okay, so that's the 10. Now we go on to the 60. Slightly different animal, because with the 60, this one is quite thick. It's what we call very thixotropic. You can take the top off this one, and this one doesn't run at all, whereas the 10 does. This one you can now use up to 60 mil in one go. But you must do it in one go. What you cannot do is put on a percentage, wait for it to cure, and then put more on top. As epoxy doesn't like itself, it won't stick to itself. So it must be done in one hit. So with the 10, the 60 I should say, this one now is quite more harder to dispense. Notice once I release the back end, I don't get any running. So the top just literally sits back on. Again, we mix this one. A little bit harder to mix because it's so thick. But you've got your two colours again. This now is a distinct two colours. So when you're mixing it, you can now see exactly when you get a complete mix. Again, scrape it off, and as you'll notice, we've got two colours. You need to get that back in and completely mix it back up. So we want one colour in the end. There we go. It's looking nice. Come off there. Only one colour now. So you can see it. So there's only one colour underneath. So that is now fully mixed. And as you can see, this is really thick. You can use this overhead. You can use it on the side. You can use it underneath. and it won't slump. It won't expand like some epoxies do. There's no shrinkage on it at all. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a small repair. We can do this in a couple of ways. We can do it simply by doing it straight over the top, which I will show. Or, if needed, if people are not so sure on how to do things, you can use things like perspex, and you can put the perspex into there, and then you can fill into the perspex. Once it's cured, the perspex then will peel off and will give you a perfect repair. If you do use perspex, you must sand afterwards because it gives you such a fine finish that the paint won't take to it. Before we use the 60, what we have to do is we have to prime. Now, you're okay to mix it if you want to like this, and then prime, because you have about 40 minutes working time now at this temperature today. So it allows you to mix up the primer, which once you put the primer onto your material, you must wait a minimum of 20 minutes. Within that 20 minutes, what the primer does is it soaks into the wood and it opens the grain of the wood, which allows the epoxy to go into the grain of the wood, which gives us the hold that we require. Because of that, we will give a 60-year guarantee on the product, but only if you use the primer first. The primer comes in two parts. You have a base material and you have an activator, and it's 2 to 1. That's why there's twice as much in there as what there is in this one. So it's 2 parts base, 1 part activator. They come with measuring caps. You don't need a great deal of it. So we open up and we put in 2 parts of this one. So that's 10. Tip it in. What I do, as you can see, is I just use a paintbrush. That's fine. The only thing is the paintbrushes, you buy cheap ones because you throw them away afterwards. Mix it, making sure it's well mixed. You can tell when it's well mixed. You can see it's just, again, it comes into one colour. And then once it's mixed, you paint it on. Don't be afraid to paint it on. Paint it in well. And then leave it. You now leave that, as I said, 20 minutes on the sides. Make sure you get good hold. And then clean up after you. These you can clean again with wipes. Just insert the wipe in. Run round. All right. Okay, having cleaned up, making sure everything's nice and clean, we waited now about 20 minutes. So now we're going to do a repair. And you can see this is still quite flexible. So take a lump and we insert it in. Take some more, push it in. Come down, clean the tool, get everything off the tool. Turn it around, because it's doing it this way. We can come over again, exactly the same as what we did last time. We come over, we come down, we come back slightly, and we cut. We now clean up. And there's our nice, neat, finished repair, ready for sanding, undercoat and priming. Now this is a before and after, just to show you, as I said, you can sand it and paint it. This is an architrave with a large hole. This was exactly the same. These are just literally held on there with a 10, and again, you won't move those. And then the center is filled with 60. And as you can see, it comes up very, very nicely. You can't even tell that it's actually been joined. Okay. This time we're going to do the back repair. Only what we'll do is we'll use some perspex. So we put the perspex on, as such, and then fill. Now at the moment, as I said to you earlier on, I don't have enough to fill this one. So what we can do is we can now mix up a little bit more, because I explained, we may have, look, no. So I can mix up some more now. And because it is still usable, I can mix up a little bit more and put it on top of it. As I said before, what I can't do is allow that to go hard and then put more on top. So mix up a small amount, because that's all we're going to need. Insert it in. Force it right in, pull it up, come in, keeping it flat and coming across. We take off the excess that's on the tool, leave the tool a little bit moist, and you can then easily, and keeping this level now, so what we're going to do is we're going to use this part of the timber, and we're going to come across to make sure we keep it level. So we're using this is our level, we come over and we peel it back and down. And the same again on the top, using the timber, bring it around. And there's our repair. We don't need to do any more to it. We can leave it now until it fully cures. And once that fully cures, you can peel it off, and then with a bit of sandpaper, you can get a perfect finish. Okay. This time I'm going to mix them up, and I'm going to show you how to colour it. So we'll do a second repair. And we'll put some colour into this one. First of all, you mix it as you would normally mix it. So just standard mixture. as normal. You must do it this way around, otherwise you won't get an even colour. So if you want to tint it, you can use any colour tint that you want, but you must only use oil-based colorants. If you use a water-based, you'll find that it will not work at all. It will separate. So it must be oil-based. Okay, clean off, come back in. Right, now we have it mixed. Now all you need is a tiny drop at a time, and it's surprising how far it will go. So just literally use a tiny drop. That's all you need. And you watch the difference that will make now to the colour of that amount of product. This is a walnut. Again, clean off the tool in case there's any bits. As you can see, there's some bits left on there that's not coloured. Take it off, put it back in. There we are, that's fully mixed. Now there's a couple of ways we can do this. We can either put it straight on like I did on the other repair, or we can use some Perspex. Or one other little trick, in case anybody notices, is if you take a cheap plastic bag, food bag, and you part them, you could use this. You could put that over there, like so. And you could actually form that, leave it on there until it cures, and then once it fully cures, you can peel it off and you'll get a perfect finish. So we could use that on this one, but we won't. This time we're going to use a piece of Perspex. So we're going to put our Perspex on there. First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some filler to make sure that we get it fully into the joint of where we want to repair. Making sure we get into our corners. Then I can take my Perspex and I can force it into place like so. Checking that you can see that it's all filled. Then take my tool and squeeze it in. Wash it in bottom there. So clean the tool, get as much off the tool as you can get off, and it stops you from pulling. Now, like I said before, you can't put any moisture underneath it, but what you can do is put moisture on top. So a slight moisture on top doesn't affect it. Now, using this as a guide, so you're keeping it flat, following yourself across. So we keep it flat, we follow across, hold it, and gently pull over and down. And same again. Keep it flat, pull over and around. Clean the tool, and same again. And get a nice finish each time. we now have a finished joint, a fill that can be sanded afterwards to bring it up as a perfect finish in a colour. Now for all those that can't get it perfect the first time, we also have the Timbabuild finish. The Timbabuild finish is a 2-part wood filler. Now these are epoxies, this is polyester. When you open a new tube, this being a new tube, what you have to do is take out the grommet. You take out the grommet and throw the grommet away. Never try and put the grommet back in. Once it's been used, just put the red top back on. That way you don't push the material inside. If you try to push the grommet back in there, you'll literally push the bag and all the material back inside, and it will cure internally. These just fit into any normal silicone tool. This one I've used before, so it may be hard on the end. No, it's okay. And as you can see, it comes out nice and neat with your 2 parts. Put your top back on. With the epoxies, you have a 2-year life. With the finish, you only have 15 months. So be more careful with the finish. Mix as you would any normal wood filler. Now with this one, you only have around about 7 to 10 minutes working time, depending on the temperature. If it's very warm, it can be as low as 5 minutes, so be careful. Spread it out, and if you spread it out, it goes off slower. Take your piece of timber, and we have a couple of holes cut out there. One go straight over, and that gives you a nice finish. Making sure again that you clean up after you, because if you don't, as I said, this will go off very quickly in comparison to the epoxies. Now, these are very easy to sand, and they give you a really nice finish. This is one I did earlier. Again, when these cure, they leave a slight tackiness on the surface. As long as there's no colour coming off, as you see there, then it's cured. Then all you need to do is lightly sand it, and it changes from darker colour to a lighter colour. And as you can see, one thing about these is you don't get a great deal of dust. Because they're styrene free, you don't get a lot of dust off them. So don't think it's not sanding because you don't see a lot of dust, because it is. Alright, there we are. It's not tacky anymore. Tackiness is gone, and you end up with a real nice smooth surface. This can go over the top of the epoxy. So even when the epoxy is cured, you lightly sand it, and then you put the finish over the top. This gives you an example of the epoxy with the finish on the surface. And as you can see, it's really nice, and you can sand it down literally to nothing. So it gives you a perfect blend and perfect mix. Okay? Last but not least in the range, we have the Timbaglaze. The Timbaglaze is a glazing sealant which is totally unique because you can use this in the wet or the dry. This will skin over in between 15 and 20 minutes, again depending on temperature. You can paint this after an hour. It's the only adhesive that can be used with double glazed units because it doesn't affect the putty tape. So you can use this with any type of glazing, whether it's a metal window, a wooden window, you can use it on plastic windows. It doesn't matter, it can be used anywhere. Again, this just fits into a standard silicone tool. The top is cut off and the nozzle inserted on. I didn't have another one, so I'll cut the top off. And then what I'm going to do is, because of the size of the unit that I'm going to show it on and demonstrate it on, I need to cut the nozzle slightly wider to allow it to come out at the size I want it. Okay, right, so we dispense it out. I'll put plenty on just for show. Obviously, normally you would have a pane of glass on here. Release the back of the tool, put your cap back on. Now I use plastic for this because I find plastic is the best. So what we will do is start off, come over, and then we pull. One sweeping movement. Then you can clean up the edges, pull off your little bits. If you're not happy with the finish, which I've left it like that on purpose, then all you need to do, take your glove off, wet your finger, rub your finger over it, and then we have a perfect finish. If you put it on and you decide that it's not needed, or you can take it back off. If it's on and it's fully cured, all you need to do is take a knife, slice it underneath, slice it down the side, and you can literally peel it off afterwards. Clean off, you're just using wipes again. And again, you can clean it off on here. And if you need to, if there's too much on there, if you take your wipe and use your wipe, you can clean it all off. Yep. And last but not least, we have the Timbabuild starter kit. So if you're interested in buying from Chemfix the Timbabuild, we have a complete unit that will get you started. First of all, we have mixing board. Behind there we have some instructions. We have the gun, the epoxy primer, we have a Timbabuild finish, and underneath that we have the Timbaglaze, and you have one ERC10 and one ERC60. And this comes in this lovely wooden box. Clips and nice carrying handle. If there's any questions, anything you need to ask me, please feel free to do so. I'm here at your disposal.
Hi everyone, welcome back. So that was our introduction to the Timbabuild epoxy resin system. I am now going to be joined live by Brian for our Q&A. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for our live Q&A. As you can see, I'm joined now by Brian Jones from Timbabuild. Hi Brian, good afternoon.
Afternoon to you
Thanks.
all.
Exactly. Good afternoon, everybody. It was a great presentation. Justin's just saying, hi Brian, what a great presentation. What's the show price for the starter box? Also, do you do a training day like others anywhere?
Yes, the price for the starter box is £105 plus VAT. We do training days. At this moment in time, I do individual training days because we can't, obviously with the COVID, we can't do mass training days. But I will do a training day anywhere in the country for anyone who wants one.
Fantastic. Well, just to explain a little about this platform for anybody that's not been on here on any of our other sessions, feel free to comment as much as you like in the comments box. We do have a drop-down tab that says ask a question. If you could hit that, it's just beneath myself and Brian on the screen, and type your questions in there for me. It will just enable me to make sure I don't miss anybody's questions and keep things moving smoothly. If anybody would like to come up on the screen and speak with Brian directly, you put your question to him. If it needs a little more explaining, that's fine. If you just type in the comments bar and I can bring you up on the screen. Or if you're happy for me to ask your question, then I'll just read it from the questions box. Now, I can see we've got quite a few questions for you already, Brian. You're going to be busy.
No problem.
Tom South says, do you only have to prime with the 60?
No, we really advise you to prime with both. It's just when I'm doing the demonstrations, with the if you were doing like a large splice, then I would definitely advise that you would use the primer.
Okay, fantastic. And we've got another question from Tom. He says, how long roughly are working times of all four products?
All four. The working time, start with a 10. The working time with a 10 is round about 7 to 10 minutes, depending on the temperature. If it's very warm, it can be as low as 5. So you have to be very careful with the 10. The 60 is 40 to 45 minutes. The Timbabuild finish, you've only got, again, about 5 to 7 minutes, again, depending on the temperature. And the Timbaglaze, then you've got about 15 minutes maximum.
Okay, and I've got a question from Bill. He's asking what's the difference between using this and 2-pack filler?
Well, 2-pack fillers are polyester based, and polyester based wood fillers tend to shrink over a period of time. They're not very good for deep fill. They're not a permanent fix, unlike epoxies. We can't give a guarantee on polyester-based fillers, but we can give guarantees on epoxy fillers. Epoxy fill is a long life filler, and it's also harder once it's gone off and gives a better finish for the timber.
Okay. I think along the same lines, we've got a question from Tom saying, are all the materials flexible? Do they move with timber if it swells or contracts?
Yes, the epoxies are designed that they move with the timber, so they don't ever crack or shrink. And they don't expand either, because there is some epoxies on the marketplace that if you put them in thick, they actually expand, whereas ours doesn't.
Okay, brilliant. Just going back to the video, Brian, the video doesn't show the finishing process because, of course, this demonstration is meant to be a taster session for your full training session. So can you tell us, do both products require sanding prior to paint, and can Timbabuild be painted over with any type of paint or varnish?
Yes, they both need sanding once they are finished. More so with the 60 than with the 10, because the 10 is put in so thin. It doesn't need as much sanding. It's easier to sand than the 60. But because you put the 60 in thick, what you need to do is to open the pores of the 60 up before you can apply any paint. But once you've done that, then yes, you can paint it with Up to now, any known paints that we know of, the only one that we are still not sure about, which we are having tested, is a linseed oil paint, which is a very ancient type of paint, but in some cases is still used. But we're not sure how that is, but we have got people testing it for us.
Okay. And how soon then after the repair's been made are you able to paint over it?
It depends on the temperature because it depends on the curing time. But what we say is, under normal circumstances when people are using it, you're looking at 60 of about a 4-hour curing time, and you can paint over it after that. But once it's hard, it can be painted over.
Okay, and in the video, you mix the EHB before you mix the EWS and paint it on. Don't you risk the Timbabuild going hard while you're leaving it on the board?
Not really, because you've got about 45 minutes, whereas you've only got to wait 15 minutes for the, or 20 minutes for the EWS, the primer, to work its magic.
Ah, I see. And I've got a question from Tom South. He says, do both the 10 and the 60 join timber like glue, and can it work on MDF?
The 10 is a jointer. The 60 is designed as a filler. It will hold it together, but it's not as good as what the 10 is as a jointer. And yes, it will work on MDF.
Okay. Brilliant. I've got a question from Damien Creedon. He's saying, are they easily sanded by hand, or is machine sanding advised?
No, they're easily sandable by hand. But if you overfill them too much, then it is advisable to use a sanding machine. But when you use a sanding machine, you have to be careful. If you apply too much pressure on them and you start to heat them up, then the epoxy will start to soften. If that does happen, stop sanding, wait a while, and it will reharden, and then you can sand again.
Okay. I've got a question from John Fletcher. He's saying, can you use the filler at the location of window fittings?
Yes, you can.
Okay. And
yeah, we use it externally more often than we use it anything else.
Right, so that's no problem then. Andrew's saying, I normally use a 2-pack filler on external woodwork. What is the recommended product or equivalent to this?
If you're using a 2-part wood filler, which would be a polyester base, the equivalent replacement for that would be the EHB 60.
Okay. Oh, another question here. Andrew's asking, what type of paint do you recommend to use once it's cured?
Any type of paint could be used, as I explained earlier on.
Yeah, you was just saying there's only the linseed, weren't you, that
yeah,
you're not sure on at the moment.
Yeah, any water-based or oil-based paints is fine.
We've covered that, I think. Justin was just saying, are they flexible? I think, yeah, we've already covered that. Does your product have a very strong smell? And if so, how long does that smell last?
The only product that's a strong smell is the 10. And the 10 does have quite a strong smell, but it only lasts until it's starting to cure.
Okay. Tom says, does it matter if some of the filler goes on to previously painted timber, if say it was a low area of painted timber that you wanted to build up?
You shouldn't really put it over painted timber. It needs to be bare timber.
Okay. I guess it just won't adhere properly if you've got something on the surface already.
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
So what would Brian say how Timbabuild excels to the competition? You just knew someone was going to ask me.
I knew someone was going to ask me that one. It's easier to use than repair care. It sands easier than repair care. And it's more competitive than repair care.
Okay. How long is the Timbaglaze guaranteed for? Gary's asking.
The Timbaglaze, 10 years.
10 years. Okay. Wow, I can't keep up with all the questions. There's so many, Brian.
All right.
Does the primer need to be cured and dry before the filler?
No, the primer never dries. You only put the primer on, you leave it on for 20 minutes. You can leave it on up to 4 hours, but no more than 4 hours. If it starts to dry, then it's not doing the job that it's supposed to do. It then becomes a barrier between the wood and the timber build. That's why we never ever recommend putting on a wood hardener, because a wood hardener goes on and forms a barrier between the wood and the timber build. With the primer, it opens the grain of the wood up. So it's still wet when you actually put the timber build on top of it, but it's opened the grain of the wood and allows the timber build to go into the grain of the wood. So you get the two are bonding together. It's not sitting on top of a layer.
Okay. Bill is saying, I have some external repairs that aren't windows, timber. Can I use it on other substrates?
You can use it on metal. It will stick to metal. The only thing it will not stick to is plastic.
Right. And Mark is asking, I invested in your kit last year. Only question I have is, am I right in thinking translucent stains can't be used?
Well, if you put a translucent stain on, it'll just show the color of the timber build.
Okay. Tom says, will they adhere to masonry, say if filling between timber and brick or concrete?
Yes, it will, but it's an expensive way of doing it, but you will need to make sure that the masonry is dust free. Otherwise, all you're doing is sticking to the dust.
Right, okay. Is the product only available to order online, or do you have UK stockists where it's readily available?
We have UK stockists where it's readily available.
Okay, and so with regards to the stockists, how have you got a stockist list on your website that people can go and have a look where their nearest stockists are?
Yes, there's a list on the website.
All right, fantastic. So I think that, yep, that brings us to the end of the questions in the comments box, unless anybody's got anything else that they'd like to ask. What are the advantages then, Brian, over using Timbaglaze over, say, normal glazing putty?
Well, the Timbaglaze, it cures in 1 hour, that it can be painted after 1 hour. Normal putty, 2 weeks before you can paint over it. You can use it on any type of window, wooden window, metal windows, plastic windows, doesn't matter. Birds don't like it, which is an ideal situation because the birds love to get and start pecking at the putty because of the linseed oil in it. So it's very, very universal, and it can also be used with double glazed sealed units as well, so it doesn't affect the butyl tape. It can be used in the wet or the dry, whereas linseed oil putty can't be used in the wet.
Okay, and with regards to the colder weather months, what would you advise about using Timbabuild then?
We advised it shouldn't be used below 5 degrees. And the lower the temperature, the longer it takes to cure.
Okay.
What I do advise is if it is below 10 degrees, below 5 degrees, I should say, if you can warm the timber up first with a heat gun and making sure that the timber build is warm before you mix it, apply the two together and keep a bit of warmth in it, it will start to cure. As soon as it starts to cure, it will continue to cure because it's self-heating. It generates its own heat when it's curing.
And Tom's asking, does the timber have to be fully dry before repairing?
No, it hasn't got to be fully dry, but it's got to be no more than 18% of moisture content. So it is fairly dry.
So you just need to test the moisture content before you start and make sure it's below 18%.
Yeah.
Okay. And what would you say to anyone who says these products are too expensive and a standard two-part body filler is fine for repairing windows?
I've a two-part. The problem that a lot of decorators have is they buy on price. and they use car body fillers. Car body filler needs to be, if you use a car body filler on cars, they bake it in an oven, and that's the only way that it will cure correctly. So if you put a car body filler onto wood, you're not actually curing it correctly because it's not being baked. But a two-part body fillers, if you put them in too thick, they crack and they come out. It never happens with Timbabuild. You'll never get anybody to give you a guarantee on a two-part body filler for use on wood. We give a guarantee with Timbabuild.
Okay. And what would you say to any decorator considering using Timbabuild instead of 2-pack?
What would I say to them? Say that again.
Say to any decorator considering using Timbabuild instead of 2-pack.
You'll get a finish that your customer will be very happy with, and it's something you won't have to go back in 6 months' time and repair.
Okay, brilliant. And what else could you expect from a full Timbabuild training session then, Brian, that it's not been covered in today's sort of introductory session?
Well, in the introductory session, I do all the work. In a training session, I expect that the trainee would actually do the work himself. So I would bring along samples, they would repair the samples, so they would actually be using the product. And as long as they use the product and do it correctly, then they will be issued with a certificate as well.
And you can't beat that hands-on experience of actually doing it yourself, can you? Watching somebody, you can only get an idea of how to do it.
That's correct. It's surprising how many people think they can do it until they actually have it in front of them. And sometimes it takes a few times before they get it right. But it's not an exercise in showing people up. It's an exercise in showing people how it works.
Yeah, and how to get the best results, and that way they can give the guarantees that your product offers.
Absolutely.
And I mean, how is Timbabuild doing with regards to how's lockdown affected the business?
It's affected it slightly, but at this time of year, it's not a massive product anyway in matter of sales. Because of the temperatures outside, it tends to slow down in mid-December and then doesn't really start to take off until March when decorators go back outside. Yeah. So for us, the lockdown this time hasn't really affected us.
Oh, that's good. And where's Timbabuild manufactured, Brian?
It's all manufactured in the UK. It's manufactured in Dewsbury in West Yorkshire.
And so if people are interested now, after seeing the demonstrations, if we've got people interested in the session, in doing your training, what should they do from here? What's the best way to get on a training session?
They can contact Andrew at the office, or they can contact me direct.
Okay, brilliant.
My email address is b.jones@chemfix.co.uk.
Okay, that's b.jones@chemfix.co.uk. Type that in the session at the end for anybody that wants to email you following the session. Now, I think we come to, I was just going to say, come to the end of our questions. There we go. Another one's popped up.
That's all right.
How much is the training, Tom's asking?
We don't charge for training.
There you go. You can get on a free Timbabuild training session. Just get in touch with Brian or Andrew in the office and they'll sort something out for you. Now, we are launching a competition live in the session. I'm just going to reveal the button for you now. So when the session ends, if you click on the enter the competition button, type your details in and you'll be entered into a draw and you could win one of 8 tubs of the Timbabuild Super Wipes. I can see those on the shelf behind you, Brian. Yes. And then after the festival, on the 1st of March, we have got our big competition in March, and Timbabuild are going to be giving away 3 of the Timbabuild starter kits. So watch out for that on our website and social media, because that will be launching on the 1st of March. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Brian, your email address, before I forget, it was Brian.
No, it's b.jones at chemfix.co.uk.
Chemfix.co.uk. There you go. Anybody that wants to get in touch with Brian about training, there's his email address if you drop him an email. Oh, we've got before every time I'm ready to go, there's more questions, Brian.
Go ahead.
Where are the training sessions based, Gary's saying?
I hold them locally to you.
There you go. So if you get in touch, and then Brian can organise that for you. Thank you everyone for joining us. It's been a great session this afternoon, and thanks for all your questions. I think somebody was saying, Brian, in the comments that you need to put all these questions and answers on your website so that people can have a look at the answers on there.
I will get Andrew to do that.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks ever so much for joining me this afternoon. And I'll see you guys again. We'll be in tomorrow morning, our first session at 9 o'clock. If you've not registered for tomorrow's sessions, jump on our website. I will put a link to the page on the comments in a minute when we finish. So if you want to stick around, you can click on there, see what else we've got coming up tomorrow and right through to the 26th of February. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you soon. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Paula.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.